store where they give out free samples? They don't do it anymore because of COVID. That sucks, right? But before COVID, where could you go to get free samples? Costco? Sam's Club does it? Walmart sometimes, not near. They have like a sample machine now. And I'm like, but then you have to like give it your information, and then it's like a vending machine. I don't really like it. Let me tell you a story. When I was a teenager, trying to be cool, do you know where all the cool kids used to hang out? Valley Fair Mall. Probably not the case anymore. You guys go hang out at Valley Fair Mall? You guys go hang out at places anymore? I don't know what kids do these days, but we used to go to Valley Fair, and we're usually too broke to buy anything, but we'd walk around and it was fun, right? Well, in the food court was the only Chick-fil-A location in West Valley. And do you know what Chick-fil-A used to do? They would take a nice chicken piece and they'd cut it up and put toothpicks in it. And then they would stand out there and they'd say, hey, you want a free sample? Now, why would they do that? Isn't that wasting money? What's the goal there, Melissa?
To attract more people.
Yeah, the idea is if I go and I eat one of those, I'm like, that is good chicken. Now, I only had a little bit, so am I still hungry? So the idea is then I'm going to buy one. Well, they didn't know I was broke, right? So all I'm doing is I went back and then I went from a different direction and then maybe borrowed a jacket. It didn't work. They'd catch on after a while. They would go away, you're done. No more free chicken for you, right? But the idea was those samples give you a taste of what it's like. Okay, now what we're going to do is apply that same thing to statistics, okay? So let's say the population is, I want to know who's watching the World Cup. Is it feasible for me to ask every person in the entire world they're watching the World Cup? But could we take samples? Could we maybe call a smaller group of people that represents, and maybe, let's say we're going to talk to 1,000 people in each country, and then based off those results, apply it back and say, okay, so our results for the smaller section were this, which means our bigger section we're just going to kind of expand that. Would that work? Is that essentially what we did for Brian here? We said, well, I want to count how many hairs are on his head. Let's just do 1 square inch and count them all. Yep, that's what we're going to do. Go ahead, Isaac.
You could also take a lot of different samples.
Mm-hmm.
And just put them together.
Exactly. So with our sampling method, we'd probably have to do several smaller ones, right? And that's how they do it. That's what we're doing. All right. So we're actually going to fill in the notes here. We've already talked about population, guys. What is population? The entire group we're interested in. So the entire group is our population. So our sample is going to be a portion of the population, or a subset of that population. Now my goal is I want the sample to reflect or represent the population. Now, another place that's known for samples is Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Have you guys been to an ice cream place? And it's like, I don't want to spend a lot of money and get something I don't like, so what do they let you do? Give you a little sample, right? Now, what would happen if you went and you sampled something? The sample was great, but then when you got the big thing, it didn't taste anything like it. Wouldn't that would be a bad sample, right? In statistics, there are bad samples, okay? And we'll talk next time about bad samples, okay? Ways people can try to gather data that doesn't reflect the population. So we want to make sure when we sample, we reflect the population. Okay, we're going to learn a couple more vocab terms, and then we're going to get to your practice here, okay? The next thing that we're going to do, we've got our population, we've got our sample. What we're going to do is talk about the parameter and the statistic. The parameter is a characteristic of the entire population, whereas the statistic is just a characteristic of our sample. So if I was talking about everyone in the world who watched the World Cup versus those in my sample who watched the World Cup. That's the difference. And what we're mainly going to do is talk about three statistics here: the mean, the proportion, or the standard deviation. Now, it's going to change depending if we're talking about our population or if we're talking about our sample. And you're going to fill in this chart. It's going to have some weird symbols, but you're going to want to see what they look like. Okay, if we're talking about our mean, the population mean, it's this Greek symbol mu. It looks like a cursive U. Okay? It's actually the letter M in Greek. So mean, we use population, we usually use Greek letters here, so that's mu. And I'll even put a little note right here. The way you pronounce that is mu. And if you have two of them, then you have mu two. Then you can have a battle and see which one's better. Who's going to win? Mu would win? I like mu better than mu two, right? Alright. If you don't know what we're talking about, it's okay. Alright, now for your sample, if we're looking at mean, we're actually going to use X bar. Do you remember seeing that from last time? So remember that example before? It said that U.S. teens spend about 26.8 hours online each week. So if that's for everyone, that is going to be mu. That is our population mean. If I was like, I don't know if that's true, I'm going to take a sample in my class and say, how many hours do you spend online? That would be a sample mean, so I would use X bar. So X bar for sample means, mu for population means. Alright, if we're talking about proportions, the symbol we use if it's a population proportion, if it's a parameter, is P. And then for samples, we're going to let that P have a hat on it. That means it's an estimate. Let me try that again. That hat's not as pointy as I want it to be. So P with the hat on it, like that. Alright, now last time we talked about standard deviation. This just helps us know how spread out the data is, okay? If we're talking about the population standard deviation, we're going to use this symbol here. It's called sigma. It's like an O with a line on it. That's our population symbol, but if we're talking about the sample, then we just do S with a little X. That's how we see sample standard deviation. We call it S sub X. Now, the reason you need to know that is because on your practice, it's going to have one where we say, mu is equal to this, and then it's going to say, is that a parameter or a statistic? Well, parameters go with our population, and statistics go with our sample. So I'm going to put a little note here that parameters come from our population, and statistics come from our sample. And the way you remember that is just by looking at the first letter. Parameters are from the population, statistics are from our sample, just like that. Okay, we're going to do a couple examples here. I'll do one with you, and you're going to do one on your own, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time working on your practice online, okay? Alright. Jade, can you read this for us? We're going to identify the population, the individual, the sample, the variable, the parameter, and the statistic. It sounds like a lot. It's really not that bad. Go ahead, Jade.
At the most recent Apple Community Accounting Survey said that the average ACT score of juniors on Hunter High was 8. Mr. Silver thinks it should be higher. He takes a sample of 35 juniors and finds their average score.
Alright, you get the context of the problem. Who is our population? Juniors, I heard someone say. Alright, so our population is going to refer to juniors. I'm going to put a little note down here. Population is juniors, and more specific, juniors at Hunter High School. You guys got your ACT scores back, right? My suggestion, if you got lower than an 18, retake it. Even if you got higher than an 18, retake it. Take it multiple times. You usually do better your second or third time, okay? Alright, okay, now what about the individual? Who is that referring to, guys? Just one junior at Hunter. Okay, now the sample that I took, how many people were in that sample? So that 35 juniors, that's referring to the sample that I took, okay? So I pulled aside 35 people and said, hey, what was your ACT? I'm trying to see if our results that we got are inaccurate, okay? Okay, what are we trying to find here? What is the variable? Yeah, the variable here is just going to be the ACT score. Now, this is where we're going to refer to what we were talking about before, parameter and statistic, okay? Remember that parameter is going to refer to what? The population, okay? So when I talk about the parameter, what was the score for the whole population?
18.
Good. Now that was the average score, so what symbol should I use if it's the population mean? Mu, good job. Mu is 20. Now when I went through and I did my sample, I got a sample mean of 18. So that's my statistic. It comes from samples, right? So that is going, oh wait. Hold the phone, guys. We put the wrong number. Which number was everybody? When we looked at all the juniors at Hunter High School, what was the average score? 18. That was the parameter. Okay, so sorry, I put the wrong number down. When I did my smaller subset of 35, what was its sample? 20. So do you see how the 20, it was from the sample, therefore it's a statistic. The 18, it came from the population, from everyone, so it's the parameter. Do you have any questions on this? I know it's a lot of vocabulary, but I hope with all the practice we've had that it makes sense. Any questions? Okay, then what we're going to do is you're going to do the exact same thing, but for this one, I did have a typo here. I'm going to say that number is too low. Yesterday was Star Wars Day, so we're doing a Star Wars question. Go ahead and answer all of those things in there. You should have 6 things based on that question, okay? Try it out, and if you get stuck, talk to your neighbor. let's go over this together. So, what are we even talking about on this problem? Yeah, Return of the Jedi. Do you know what movie that is?
Yeah.
What is it? Which episode? Good job, Isaac. Yeah, this is episode 6. This is the one with the Ewoks. You guys seen the Ewok Star Wars one? You're missing out. You should go watch it. Okay, so who is our population? We're seeing how many have seen this movie. Out of what? Who's our population? U.S. adults. Good job. And that number, 47%. What would that be considered? Is that a parameter or is that a statistic? Good job. Why is it a parameter? How do we know that's a parameter and not a statistic? Thanks, Antonio, is for the whole population. And just so you know, the way we would write it is we'd write P equals, and we don't usually use percentages, so we just do 0.47. We convert it to a decimal, okay? All right, cool. So then an individual in this example would just be one of the U.S. adults, right? So it'd be one U.S. adult. One of the things they talk about is an observation. And an observation is just a result of one individual, okay? You'll see that on your homework. Okay, what was our sample? How many people did Luke talk to? 100. So that was the 100 friends. Who we're going to assume is going to be U.S. adults. Okay, now, that means our statistic is going to come from our sample. So what number was that? Good. What symbol are we going to use for sample proportion? Nice. And we're going to write 75% as 0.75. All right. And then the only thing I don't think we've talked about is the variable, which is just going to be what? Have they seen the movie? Okay. Now this is going to bring up a good point. Why would it maybe be higher for his 100 friends than for the whole population? What do you think, Braylon? There you go. They're probably Star Wars fans, right? And whereas there's other people who probably aren't. So the way we take samples matters. And that's actually going to be what we talk about next time, are different ways we can sample, and when they're good samples and when they're bad samples. All right, now let me show you. That's it for today. Do you have any questions on this? We're going to spend the next about 40 minutes working on your assignment. So let me show you first what you're doing. You just watch me and then I'll have to get out your Chromebook. If you go on to Canvas, it's going to have Module 9 Statistics. That's what we did last time, the basic review. And then it has your practice for today, which is Wednesday 5-5. Cinco de Mayo. Come to Zupas, right? I don't think it meant. Okay, so what we're going to do, your assignment, oh, I want to reset it. Let's go back. Wait, reset this. Hold on one second. Your assignment is going to be just a lot of questions about, is that a parameter, is it a statistic, all that fun stuff, okay? So, I'm going to see if I can reset it so we can go through a couple together, and then you're going to do it on your own. Can you work with your buddies? Absolutely. Well, what I don't want you to do is to just sit there and do nothing or do stuff for other classes, okay? Let's go to preview this time. Reset, there we go. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm going to come down to a different one first, and we're going to come back to that. What? Oh, man, I'm struggling, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, let's just do this first one. Okay. Will you read that nice and loud there, Louise?
Study new health creation plan to take a sample survey of 1,500 Americans to estimate the proportion who have
so there's two things they're interested in here, okay? Our population, they wanna know what proportion have insurance, health insurance, and what was the average amount they spent on that health insurance, right? Now, it would be way too hard to go and ask what's our population here, every American? We could assume like adult. Do you have insurance? So, what did they do instead? Awesome. When I use this letter N, that just refers to your sample size. So they talked to 1,500 people. And now they're going to ask questions about the population parameters and the sample statistics. Remember that your parameters are what's based off the population, which is for everybody, and the sample is based off your statistics, which is only for those 1,500. So, if we're talking about the population, is the mean dollar amount spent on healthcare last year among all Americans, is population everybody? What do you guys think? Population is everybody. So that was our first one, was the mean amount spent. Okay, cool. Mean dollar amount spent on healthcare among the 1,500 surveyed. Is that everybody? No, that would be our sample. That quick? Oh, cool. 1,500 surveyed, nope. Total dollar amount spent in America. Did it want the total dollar? No, it wanted the mean, so we're not going to do that one. The proportion of all Americans who have insurance. Was that our other question? The mean amount that they spent, and do they have insurance for everybody? And this is number. We didn't want the number. We wanted the, if we look specifically at it, we wanted the proportion who have health insurance and the mean dollar amount. So you have to read carefully. Let's go through and check your work. Uh-oh. Okay, it's because I only did the first half. But is this section right? Yes. Now come down here, it's going to say, okay, what are your statistics? The statistics don't apply to everybody, it applies to your sample. That means the mean dollar amount to our sample of 1,500, yep, that's going to be that one. And then when I come down here and look at the proportion for the 1,500, let's check our work there. Cha-ching, we got it right. Did it submit it? There we go. So there's one example. Let's go to the next question, okay? If you get it wrong, do you get another attempt? 60% of freshmen participated in the 60% of freshmen participating in a survey said they have met with their academic counselor. Is that a parameter or a statistic? The real question is, did it come from a sample or was it from everybody? How do we know this is in a sample? It was from a survey, which means it was coming from a survey. So a sample, so it's a statistic. Boom, we're good. Let's go to the next question. Determine whether it's a parameter or statistic. 20% of vehicles sold are compact cars. Is that referring to all vehicles or a sample? All vehicles, so that's a parameter because it refers to your population. Awesome. Let's go to, it has a lot of these. Let's jump ahead to maybe a question towards the end. Okay, cool. Last one, then you go on your own, okay? The U.S. Census Bureau needs to estimate the median income of females in the U.S. They collect income from 3,500 females, state the individual, variable, population, sample, parameter, and statistic. Is this like what we just did? So what are they trying to find out here? The median income of females in the U.S. So what is that referring to? That's our population, right? So our population is going to be females in the U.S.